Back to She Can, where women lead by example. We interview women from all walks of life to hear their journey, how they got to where they are today. These women lead with their stories to support others and to lead others and guide others, and it's easier to be what you can see. And I'm very excited to talk to Ronit Plank today. Ronit, welcome to She Can. You're an award-winning writer, editor, teacher, podcast host, and speaker who believes that stories save us, which is very exciting to me because I couldn't agree more. You lead memoir writing workshops online and offline. You have a podcast called Let's Talk Memoir. You're a huge help and support to writers, especially memoir writers. You write fiction and nonfiction. You were nominated for many prizes. You won some of them. Your work appeared in The Atlantic, The Washington Post, The Writer's Digest, The Rumpus, The New York Times, etc. And you wrote 2 books. The first one is called When She Comes Back, and it's a memoir, and you will tell us more about it. And the second book is a collection of short stories. Home is a Made-Up Place, that also won various awards. So tell us a bit more about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Well, Stephanie, thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm beaming with gratitude to you, and thank you so much for having me on this platform and your show. I'm just thrilled to be here, and I really appreciate the mission of your work. So yes, I don't know where to begin. I would say that, I have been writing and teaching memoir for a while right now. I began as an actor. I was not a writer. I did not want to write. It was not something I wanted to do at all. I like to be on stage in the center of everything and didn't even understand why anyone would want to be a writer. My dad was a freelance writer as well as a marketer and PR guy in New York. And I would see him toiling at night, writing until late, late, late at his typewriter. He was raising us. He's a single dad. And I just never saw any glamour or interest in that. But I also was not paying attention to the fact that it seemed that I enjoyed my writing assignments in school and that I didn't really mind creating worlds and I didn't mind trying to get what I felt on the page. So cut to acting, acting, acting. I was in New York acting. I was in LA acting. That's where I met my husband. I worked with Tim Robbins, the Actors Gang. I worked with Improv Olympic. I took class at the Groundlings. And then I started teaching English for English language learners, people who had immigrated to LA, and I started teaching more and more. We moved to Seattle. I had both of my kids. I taught some more. I wasn't acting. And then I realized, I need to create. I need to do something. And maybe my sister, who had a hunch years ago that I should write, was correct. So I took a fiction extension course. Then I took another fiction extension course at the University of Washington. Then I took a nonfiction extension course. Then in 2015, I went to graduate school at Pacific University, a low residency program to get my master's. I went in wanting to do fiction. I came out doing memoir with my manuscript. And in 2021, my memoir, When She Comes Back, was published. And in 2023, my short story collection, Home is a Made-Up Place, was published. In between, I was getting bylines. In between, I was podcasting. I launched my podcast, Let's Talk Memoir, in 2022. I'm now in season 6, and I can talk all about that in a moment if you'd like. And I'm teaching a class that starts in March online at the University of Washington Extension Program, which is a 10-week course in memoir. And that is where I began. So it's a really lovely full circle moment for me.
Incredible, Ronit. So tell us a little bit more. When was it that you felt this is really what matters to me and how I want to matter in the world? And tell us about your insights into what the power is. How do our stories save us?
Great. Thank you for asking that. So I think that for a long time, and this is a bit of a nuanced question and a nuanced answer, I hope, but for a really long time during my acting days and my younger years, when I was still working out what had happened in my childhood, which essentially, in a nutshell, is that my mom and dad They basically broke up like so many families do, especially in the 70s and the 80s. And first, my father left for the East Coast, leaving my mom with two small children. And then my mom left and decided to follow a guru in India named Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, who Wild Wild Country is a docuseries that Netflix made about that.
Mm.
It's a six-part docuseries. And so for a long time, I didn't really want to talk about my past. I would maybe think about it sort of like a one-liner. My mom left, my mom left for a guru joke. That's what it was for me. I pushed ahead as we often do in life to succeed and to feel okay and to get over our past. I chased guys that weren't good for me. I ran away from men who might have been good for me. I knew I wanted to be a mom. I knew I wanted to be married and have love, but I also didn't know how to overcome maybe what you'd call an insecure or anxious attachment, which came from the way I grew up. And at the same time, I had such a good relationship in present days with my mom and dad for the most part, and my sister. We had a pretty functional relationship. But I think that I wasn't really staying still long enough to figure out what had happened. And that was affecting my romantic partnership. And that was just something that was not an element of my life that I wanted to address. And so somewhere along the line, I switched from hiding my story and my truth in fiction to realizing I had a story to tell and to realizing that it might have value for other people. And to most importantly, feel like there wasn't something wrong with me that I had to hide. I could lean in deeply and explore it. And the work I was doing in therapy, and the work I was doing in my marriage, and the work I was doing even in my friendships to be vulnerable and to stay put when someone was telling me something, or let me know that they needed me, or let me know that I needed them, which was frightening. I could stay still and be vulnerable long enough to let that permeate
Mm.
and to know that I was strong because of that. And all of that sort of helped me stop hiding.
Yeah.
And at the same time, instead of saying I didn't want to write a memoir, I realized, oh, wait a minute, with the help of some very good teachers who helped me during my programs for writing, no, your story is important. And if you don't share your story, somebody else will. Somebody
Mm.
else will tell your story for you. And that really kind of lit a flame in me. I didn't want somebody else to write my story or tell people or me what my experience was like. And so that began my memoir project, and I started to embrace memoir. And over the last many years now, I've been soaking in as many stories as I can. I mean, I would say for the podcast alone, I read dozens and dozens of memoirs a year. I mean, I probably have interviewed, to date, I have 150 episodes of the podcast out, but I have more in the queue. So I'm getting close to 200 interviews with acclaimed memoirists and writing teachers, which has helped my process of discovery. And I share it as a free resource, much like what you're doing, Stephanie, to help bolster other people and to help them see that they can learn from other stories, and that when we share stories, we do survive better, because
Mm.
stories are how I survived, not consciously, but telling myself the story that my mom was coming back, or telling myself the story that I would one day get out of where I lived, or telling myself the story that I could succeed and do something like acting or writing, has buoyed me and helped me continue on my path. And when I hear stories, I'm reminded of our fortitude and our resilience, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's a really healing thing to do. And it's a real exercise, the leaning into the truths that then take us to a place where we feel more whole, right? So tell us a little bit more about your big lessons, Ronit. You've been teaching this, you've been doing it. What are the big lessons in looking back over the last many years and people getting to the point where they understand this is a really powerful thing to do, to figure out your story? What is my story? And to
Mm.
write it down.
Well, I would say among the lessons are, in no particular order, and I will just speak as they come to me. Your story matters, which we just talked about. Nobody's story is exactly the same. Now, your story is your story because of the way you remember it, the way that it has affected you, the way it stays with you, and
Mm.
because of what you make of it now. So, a distinction that I learned early on, which is what I misunderstood about memoir, for example, is that it's not the same as autobiography. So when I talk about memoir, I'm not talking about endless pages of every single day in someone's life.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the encapsulation of an experience or a period of time in which the memoirist, the person learned something or came to understand something.
Mm.
The distinction is also that we don't necessarily understand it in real time. It's in going back and reflecting on it. So, what I've really come to understand is that our stories matter because though many people might have experienced trauma or abuse or abandonment, we all respond to it differently. And that's why all of our stories can be told. And if we shape them in such a way that readers or listeners feel engaged and interested, that they understand that there's going to be something that they're going to gain from knowing this story, something that the speaker or the writer has learned and is coming to share, then we will sit around that campfire, that proverbial campfire, and listen to that story because we, I think, are geared to look for dynamic change and growth and salvation. And I don't mean salvation in any type of religious context. I mean, we want to see forward motion. We
Yeah.
want to see what's going to happen next. We are craving that excitement and we also want to feel something. So, some of the lessons I've learned, which I spoke to before, are that vulnerability saves the day. And the difference between me and 10 years ago me, I can see it. I don't know if my loved ones see it. I haven't asked them necessarily. But the fact that I can stay put and absorb what's happening around me, really reflect on it and let it work on me, makes me a better mom, a better writer, a better wife, a better friend. I think a better teacher, a better human. And so I allow what is occurring to really affect me and wash over me before I respond because I really want to be as authentic and vulnerable as I can.
Mm.
And something I learned a long time ago is that, and I'm sure your other guests have mentioned this, is that vulnerability is not a weakness,
Yeah.
it's a strength.
Yeah.
And when we can look at somebody else's story or I look at them in the eyes and say, I see you, that's hard. I'm sorry. And what happens next? What do we do about this? How did you survive? We all grow. I also have learned, and I think this is really important for anyone interested in telling their stories. For me personally, memoir is not about pointing fingers. It's not about throwing people under the bus. It's about being clear about our own part in our stories and what has occurred. And it's also about showing the other person with dialogue and scene and in action so readers can make a decision for themselves. The other element of memoir writing and telling stories that comes up a lot is whose story is it to tell?
Mm.
So a lot of people wonder, is it okay to write about loved ones? Is it okay to share the stories of our parents or family who are really private? And I would say, and I've written some articles about this too, this is a very personal decision. It's a very individual decision. And when I interviewed memoirists, some said they never showed their pages to loved ones because they felt that whatever the loved ones had done in their past was on their shoulders and their own story, the speaker's story, was theirs to tell.
Mm.
Others felt that they couldn't share a story so personal and deep without first showing it to the people it concerned. And Mary Karr, who wrote many memoirs, including The Art of Memoir, she talks about how she shows her pages to the people she writes about so they know what's happening. So that's a very personal decision, but I would say it's one that is really individual.
Ronit, so how you're obviously teaching this a lot. How do you lead? What kind of a leader are you? What kind of a leader do you want to be? How do you lead with your story?
I have found that for years now, I think that I try to make people feel comfortable, whether it's new friends I'm meeting or groups I'm speaking to, by revealing my story and my truth. And I'm sure I've said, I'm sure you're getting the sense of this from where I'm paying attention in this conversation, but vulnerability. I'm going to show you something of my past, of my wound, for example. I am going to share something that I have learned or know in hopefully not a heavy-handed way. For example, let's say I meet a mom who is having trouble because I've led new mom support groups as well, who's having trouble with an element or doesn't understand something about her child. And I will do this in my friendships too. I will gladly talk about a time where I had a challenge or an obstacle or was confused about something as a way for them to feel comfortable, hopefully, to share and to maybe be curious about what worked for me. So I try not to just be digging and digging around in people's pasts and trying
Mm.
to, excavate forcefully things from them. But I find that if I can just show my cards and share what I've been through, people are that much more at ease. I try to normalize the grief or the trauma or the shame that so many people feel. And when I'm editing manuscripts, when I'm talking with students, some of the exercises we do are about revealing what we thought we couldn't reveal. Because, I mean, I've heard it all. I feel like I've heard it all. I think if you've lived long enough, you know people or have yourself experienced great strife or difficulty or confusion or pain. So it's there out there anyhow. It's in the ether. So it's okay to talk about it, and it doesn't make us, I don't think, heavier or weaker. And sometimes my husband will see the memoirs I have laying around the house that I'm reading, and he'll read the titles aloud, and he'll say, "How can you read this? How can you do this? What do you do with this weight?" And I don't know. I don't think that I'm someone who's geared toward looking at tragedy and trauma because it makes me feel a certain way, but it's more about those stories help me celebrate life and celebrate how we survive and how we make it out. I mean, to tell a story about how you survived and how you're still here is one of the most affirming things you can do.
Most helpful things you can do also, because it truly shows others that they too can do it, and it gives them permission to go to these vulnerable and authentic places and lean in. And I think that's so important. Ronit, so what do you feel are the qualities that you've acquired over the years of really leaning in and teaching and writing?
hmm I think that I have long been able to make fun of myself. And though I don't write funny, which my sister, who's a comedy writer, and my husband, who likes to read comedy, have also asked me, why don't you write funny? But it just doesn't come out that way. I might be funny on stage or when I talk to people, but my humor just goes away when I'm writing. I get a very older, quieter self that shows
Mhm.
up on the page. So I think you have to be true to your voice. I think that you have to think about how you want people to hear you. I'm careful with my words. I try not to talk badly about people. I assume that everyone is going to hear everything I say somehow, especially because we're so connected between social media and between all the networks we have. You need to be you need to be able to stand behind your words. You need to stick to what you believe and not blame others in a way that you wouldn't want them to hear. I had someone I knew who talked with a client of mine about another program and then posted about it later in a community on Facebook. And they kept the person anonymous, but they used it as a way to talk about their own upcoming workshop, their own upcoming offering. And I felt worried for my client and the person that I had sent to them because I
Mm.
felt like what she'd been going through was very personal and very private and very deep pain. And I resented and worried about the fact that that was used as an example to showcase this other person's mastery at teaching. It
Yeah.
just worried me. So I really try to talk the talk and walk the walk. I also think that it's really important to be ambitious. I think that what sets some writers apart and speakers apart, and people who create material and content are the ones who stick it out even when it's hard. Because I don't think that the writers who get the bylines are necessarily the best writers in the industry, but they are the most tenacious and they're the ones who don't quit. So I really think that setting goals for yourself, whatever it is, your 1 month goal, your 3 month goal, your year goal, maybe even your 5 year goal. And I actually have to do that. It's early 2025 and I haven't done it yet. I keep thinking I need to do that. And it's fun to do it. It's dreaming and wishing. But I need to do that about my podcast and my writing goals and my teaching goals. It will really help me. And also where I want to be more patient in my life, how I want to take care of myself. Those are things that I've learned that I try to pass on. And I also want to say that no program or writing plan is good for everyone the same. Some people have small children. Some people have healthcare concerns. Some people are dealing with autoimmune illness. Whatever you can manage that fits for your life is progress. If you can only write 200 words a day, if you can only get to a walk twice a week, that's still wonderful for you. So you have to be good to yourself. You have to give yourself the encouragement, not the bashing.
Yeah. Ronit, and on the flip side, what do you feel are the sort of challenges you face in your day to day? How do you reframe it?
Yes, I do face self-doubt. That happens. I do face questions about why am I pushing at the speed that I push. So I tend to go fairly intuitively with my projects. And while I plan and I'm organized and I enjoy being a producer as well, and I try to be very responsible and do what I say I'm going to do, I also listen to myself and my gut. So if I feel that something is not serving me anymore, or if I'm feeling resistance within me about maybe seeing someone or going to do something, I have gotten so much better now in middle age listening to myself and maybe pulling away from something. I recently said no to something that I had initially thought I could do, and then no money had changed hands, no commitment had really been, you know, started, but I just said, no, I can't do this. And as for the podcast and my writing, I'm trying not to just chase shiny objects. I'm trying to really stay in my gut and follow what my instincts are telling me about what I want to do next. And I love that. I love that about this creative work. I also love when I know, okay, I think this is the way I need to edit this manuscript or talk to this student. I'm getting a sense that this is what they're working on, and I feel like I need to ask them about this. So yeah, so far my instincts have worked for me. And when I don't listen to myself, when I do things that I really in my core don't want to do, that is not a good outcome.
Yeah, be fully aligned with yourself.
Hmm.
Ronit, so what are you most proud of to date?
I'm most proud of my children and my marriage. And I'm proud of the fact that I had a hunch that I could write, even though I didn't have all the tools I needed yet. And I was a new writer way back in 2009. And then I stuck with it and I pushed myself and I didn't take no for an answer and I kept working and I kept sending things out. And today I have 2 books. I have lots and lots of articles and essays and now poetry. And I have a writing community around me, virtually and in person, that supports me and that I support, and that I created a life for myself that I couldn't have envisioned.
Yeah, amazing. So tell us, what are your plans and goals in 2025 and beyond?
Thank you for asking, Stephanie. My goals are I have a book on submission with an agent right now. So I would love to see a publisher buy that and I'd love to work on that this year. I have sent it out on proposal, which means I haven't written the whole thing yet. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to create some more lyric essays. So any writers listening might not know what that is, or maybe they do, but it's a little more nonlinear, fluid work. So I'm excited to bring more poetry into my work. I'm excited for this class at the University of Washington's online program and to also offer another class or two this year to create a nice writing cohort. And I'm excited to see what happens next in this next year of change and that we all stay safe and hopefully recover well from our various injuries and worries about the environment and politics and take care of each other.
Yeah, and the LA fires that have been ravaging
Yes, I
LA
have
for the
family
last
there.
weeks, and we're thinking of those
Yes.
people too. Ronit, what would you like people to take away from your story?
I would like people to know that no matter how small or scared or weak or without resources they might think they are, they do have what it takes to get out of a situation that they don't think they can endure anymore. And they can become a different but same version of themselves, the version of themselves they want to see in the world. They can become that, but they should know that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to talk about what they're experiencing. And if they feel it, guaranteed there's other people in their world or nearby who feel the same way.
Ronit, I'm so grateful for you to tell your story, to tell us how our stories can save us. I am taking away three things from you that I think were absolutely beautiful. I see you. I know it's hard. What happens next? I think this is so often we're in situations where we either not answering or not sure what to say. This is always a good thing to say. Whose story is it? I think also very important, right? Some of the things is not our place to tell. And that
Mm.
becomes very instinctively clear, I think. And also the last one, I will do I will think everybody is hearing everything I say, and that really keeps you within the parameters of what one should say and one shouldn't say. So I'm taking away these three very beautiful things from your story, and I'm so grateful to have you on She Can.
Thank you so much for creating She Can, and thank you for having me as a guest. It's been lovely.